Hi, this is part 2 of looking at the CTJS game editor and how I make a simple game using it. I am in no way an expert on this. It is just the way I have found useful for me to use this editor, and maybe, just maybe, you can find something useful in this too. In the description below there is a link to part 1. If you have not seen it yet, you might want to start with looking at part 1. So, I'm making a small game to train the alphabet for my grandchildren. We have made rooms for a starting page and for the letter A. We will now implement going between the rooms. First we need to define using the left mouse button as an action. For this we go to the Projects page and pick the Actions and Input Methods tab. We choose an action, we give the action a name that we then can use in coding. MB1 for mouse button 1 is a name I find easy to remember. This is the only action we will need for this game. We will need to define an input method for this action. We will pick primary button press. I guess any press would be an option too. Now this action will not only apply to a mouse button, it will also, when applicable, work with touch on a touch screen. There are also input methods for the keyboard, but we will not use any of that in this game. So now that we have an action and can click on stuff, we need a button to click on. A traditional button might have 3 stages: idle, hovered, and pressed. I have made images for a button in those 3 stages and loaded them from the texture page. I have then gone to the templates page and created a template from the image for the button 1 and named the template button. We will now add some code to make the objects created from the template react to the pointer. There are 4 events that we can place code in. Each event is a function. The events will be executed at the creation of a copy from the template, at the start of a frame of the game loop, at the end of a frame of a game loop, at the destruction of a copy made from the template. I will use the event frame start. The first thing I want to do is to check if the pointer is over the button. There is a ct code function to check if a point is inside a rectangle. Ct code starts with ct. This code is in a group called Utilities, which is noted with just the letter U. As you can see, we get information on different options available as we add the parts to the code. Within the utility group we pick point rectangle. We add a parenthesis. In that we will add the parameters for this function. We need 2 numbers representing the x and y values for the point we are checking. Then we need to give parameters for the rectangle that we will check if the point is inside. One way is to enter the values for the top left corner and the values for the bottom right corner. The point we want to check for is the position of the pointer. We have some ct code for that, ct pointer x and ct pointer y. Now we need the values for the rectangle. The top left corner is where a button created from the template is placed in the room. That will be this x and this y. To get the lower right corner we need to use the top left corner values and add the width and height of the button, which is 100 respective 50 pixels. Now we make an if statement checking if the pointer is over the button. If it is, we want the texture to be the button2 image. To do that, we write this text equals button2. If the pointer is not over the button, we want the texture to be button1. But we have an additional option if the pointer is over the button, and that is if the button is pressed down. That is, if mouse button 1 is pressed down. So we add an if statement for that. CT actions MB1 down will be true as long as the mouse button is held down. This is all the code we will need here. Now let's go to the main page and create a copy from the template. In part 1, we created a copy with drag and drop. Here we will create a copy using code. So we create a copy at the creation of the room. We call it this button and create it using ct templates copy, with the parameters being the name of the template from which we create the copy. We also set an X and Y value for our new button. Now let's go to the main page and see how this turned out. So we need to save and launch. And we can see that the button behaves as intended. But it does not do any work. Actually, that doesn't matter because this is not the button we are going to use. This was only a small demonstration on how we could make a traditional button. The button we are going to use is already drawn on the background. We will not need to create a separate object for this button. So we remove the code creating the first button. Then we create a new code for the button, called the next button, on the main page. We check for if the pointer is over the button in the same way as we used earlier. For the rectangle, I use values I have taken when making the background image. A nifty little feature in this editor is behind this little button with an arrow on it. Here we have a notepad for the project we are working on, where we can enter information we can need during making the game, such as positions of buttons. This one is the position of the next button. The button is round and we are checking for a rectangle, but that is not really a problem. A rectangle is close enough. We don't need pixel perfect. It will work just fine. We also have a global notepad. In this, the information is available in all projects. Here I have started collecting code snippets I use a lot. The Learn and Modules doc will make a lot of documentation available. Really handy to have all this information so easy to reach. So we check if the pointer is over the button and we check if the mouse button is clicked. In this case we use pressed instead of down. The difference is that pressed only fires the one time when the button is pressed, while down fires as long as the button has not been released. We will get back to why we want pressed rather than down. If the button is pressed while the pointer is over the button, we want to jump to room A. We do that using ct rooms switch room A. In room A, we add the same code, but here we make the switch to main page. We save and launch, and we can now jump between main page and room A. You might now see why we wanted pressed instead of down. Had we had down, the conditions to jump back to the previous page would be fulfilled until we release the button, since the next button have the same position on both pages. With pressed, we need to first release the button and press it again before the conditions necessary to make the jump will be at hand.
Now we can move between rooms using a button. This will be all for this part of the video series. In the next part, we will have pages for all the letters, and we will expand on the jump to the next page so that the next page is picked randomly. When I have made the next part and uploaded it, I will add a link to it in the description below. So this is it for this time. See you later. Bye.